such a fabulously exciting place to be that we're living remotely.
Not in their quarantine facility because they were home. But he didn't do it for AIDS testing because CDC told him that
I feel like we're all like sort of handcuffed, like you would never be able to pick any of us up. So just to warn you, are you lost?
No, I was going to go grab that. I wasn't sure. Okay.
And that's just like, that's not to say anything about subsequent.
Thank you.
Is that enough?
I'm glad to be here. Yeah. That's fine. Definitely never know. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I have 2 chairs. Maybe. No?
here you go. I guess Carlos isn't here.
You spider? Spider webs. Not actual. There was a spider in the food. Big enough. Big enough to be disconcerting.
So I was this was supposed to come and I was baking whatever and my husband's already like, oh, you wait. And I'm yeah, sure enough.
Okay. Not that I know.
Some nightmares are made up.
Yeah, the email
I know.
that we
Yeah.
but they get the, like, add their names to them, and they put school emails. Yeah, that should be good.
What are you up to, young man? Here. You're here. That's all that counts.
That's right, that's right.
Greetings, Yuri. How are you?
Almost stopped. Almost stopped.
That's was good. I didn't like that.
Oh, you didn't?
Video themselves, I was like, okay, that's taking it to another level. I was impressed that I should have. Everybody will be, I know.
Seriously.
It's good though.
I know. So, friends of mine,
For sure.
and so they, during the pandemic, they had made special flavors because pandemic things. There's, what she sent me today, there's pumpkin spice.
I need that in my life.
Where we're all at.
That's
things.
amazing. That is excellent for anything, really. This one, I think there was something.
The lemon one.
That's what you should do for your custard.
I did the dark fire smells. So yeah, that's working from home.
Miss Brand, do you have any? Oh,
Do you have an agenda?
Yes.
I got it. I knew where you were going.
That's impressive. That you knew exactly what you were doing with that.
What other names, Joe?
Thank you very
It's a
much.
nice little kind of a, yes, yeah. Clearly, sentences will be an issue this evening. Obstacle course, that's what I was thinking. All right, so. Well, it appears that we're all present and accounted for that are planning on being here this evening. I'd like to call to order the sixth regular meeting of the Board of Directors of SAD 52, and we have Jessica to lead us in the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So our first order of business would be to act on the minutes of October 8th. Any errors or omissions on those? Seeing none, accept those under general consent. That brings us to communications. Kim.
Yes. I would like to report that Paula Pratt, Green Central School special education teacher, is resigning effective October 9th. She is taking another position in the district, also at Green.
Thank you. Adjustments to the agenda. Do we have any of those this evening?
We do not.
No adjustments. That brings us to committee reports. Finance, Gary.
We have not met.
Finance has not met. PTB, that would be me. PTB did meet, and I have notes for the meeting as well, which is always exciting. So, discussion around the Oak Grove grant, which will provide for replacement of raised beds that were out kind of behind near the cafeteria that were circa Sharon Hathaway and needed to be replaced, so that'll be covered by a grant, and we'll be seeing those. Kara Getty joined us and described a mini grant process that initially she had envisioned with some outdoor items, perhaps benches, and has since morphed into thoughts around involving math GT students and making a little bit more of an experiential learning process, budget building, and talking with their peers about what might be good uses around that. We discussed again the Pine Grove here at Levitt, and Dan was successful in having arborists from both Webster and Lucas trees come in and do a little bit more assessment of the tall trees, and their assessment sounded quite in alignment that there are some real concerns with the safety of those trees, and that their recommendation certainly appeared to be to take the trees down. They felt like select cutting might be possible, but could in fact increase our risk around those remaining trees. So Dan is in the process of getting costs from a couple different individuals, Mr. Castonguay and Mr. Luce, as far as what the cost would be to take those trees down and remove the attendant debris around those. And the committee had a fair bit of discussion and wanted to be clear that without those trees, that certainly changes the look of the area behind the building there, and that's kind of one of the neat things about the campus. And Dan had already had some conversations with Evan and some plans around what appropriate replanting sorts of items would be out there that would not contribute their pine needles to roofs and things like that, where they're not particularly helpful. So we'll hear more details on that, and the consensus seemed to be that getting those trees down and doing it in a time frame and a manner that does not happen during the school day and also doesn't tempt fate that once we decide to take them down, we don't have some sort of storm that causes them to come down in an unexpected way on their own, because it is 2020, of course. Dan also updated the committee on miscellaneous projects. Siemens chiller should arrive sometime sooner rather than later. Wood chip bin, if folks noticed when they came around the campus here, it has trusses on, which is exciting. It'll be a functional wood chip bin. TES unit ventilators are in place. That process is moving along. Dan shared some pretty cool pictures with the committee of the cross-country trail work, and it looked like a great place to run. Not quite as exciting, perhaps, if there aren't roots and things to trip over, but it looked, if one were so inclined, it looked like a great place to run. Digital radios have been rolled out to the high school and the middle school, both, Dan. So that process is moving along and should improve communication greatly. GCS playground is in place, just waiting on chips. The IKEA pre-K equipment is on site, but as many things like that, needs a little more installation, so that's in the works as well. I think those were the high points on PTP. So clearly, still lots of projects going on, lots of things to keep people busy with that. So, any questions? And if anyone had any questions, I think I probably just direct you to Dan, but that's all good. Anyone? Well, kudos to Dan and his crews for keeping things moving right along here. Curriculum policy, Joanne.
We did meet. We did an approval for a job description for human resource specialist. We did a policy BEDD, rules of order and regulations. We did policy BIC, freedom of access training. We did IHBA, individualized education programs, and we deleted policy DM, cash in school buildings, because it's not a policy we have to have. So it's gone, hopefully, after you vote tonight.
So curriculum policy has been busy as well. Thank you. Drum roll, please. Item 5.4, student representatives report. And we would like to welcome, I say we, yes, we, all of us would like to welcome the student that's with us this evening. I can certainly pass the microphone over if you'd like a microphone for your, no pressure.
Speak up.
Excellent, yes.
I'm Olivia Morel. I'm a senior, and I'm happy to be here tonight. I'm excited to work with all of you and see what we can accomplish together.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us, Olivia, and thanks to Mr. Shaw for keeping this process moving along in such a, shall we say, unusual year. That brings us to administrator report. And Olivia, don't be shy as we move through agendas. There's nothing that's probably crazy amounts of discussion this evening, but as you look through the agenda and as we begin discussion on items, please don't be shy. Just raise your hand, and I will do my best to see through the fog and recognize you so you can weigh in on things. Administrator report, building principals, and Mr. Roberts.
Okay, so good evening. Before our building principals get started, 2 weeks ago at our last board meeting, the board was discussing the Maine School Board Association proposed resolutions. One of those resolutions is equity in education. And so we had a brief conversation about the importance of raising awareness about bias and stereotyping. And so in talking to principals, we recognize that bias is everywhere. Often it's unconscious and so unnoticed. But we do work every day. A lot of it's embedded, but always purposeful, to make sure that we are fostering sustained positive interactions, communication, collaboration, respect and understanding between and among our students and staff at all times. So So tonight, I asked our building principals each to share a practice that they are doing related to that.
Good evening, my name is Kelly Marston, I'm the principal at Turner Elementary School. So anti-bias education involves creating a community that supports all dimensions of human differences, including culture, race, language, ability, learning styles, ethnicity, family structure, religion, sexual orientation, gender, age, and socioeconomic differences. At the elementary level, novels and picture books are often used as tools that offer great opportunities to spark discussions, critical thinking skills, and to support long-term anti-bias thinking. Concepts such as identity, diversity, justice, and action are embedded within those lessons and are designed to foster self-awareness, confidence, family pride, and positive social identities. In addition to the lessons delivered in the classroom by teachers, our school counselors use specific core values, literature, and other materials to create opportunities for discussion and point out our oneness as people. And we're each going to talk about different things. We want to start with that as the foundation, and Brian's going to talk about the early primary ages and what they use for curriculum.
Thank you. Good evening, my name is Ryan Tate, and I'm the principal at Turner Primary School. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to introduce you to Snail, which is one of our puppets that our second step program that our primary pre-K and K teachers use to promote different core values in our students. Second step is it's our pre-K and kindergarten program that promotes social, emotional, and academic success. It supports positive interactions, collaboration, understanding, and respect between and among our students. And each grade level has about 20 to 25 lessons where students practice and follow up together. And ideally, when children exit TPS, they have skills in confidence, tolerance, acceptance, and assertiveness. So essentially, the teacher has different cards with different scenarios and different concepts, and the teachers work together around working together to talk about them, to really grow in confidence skills and assertiveness skills. So all of our pre-K classrooms, the teachers use the puppets, and they use these lessons to really promote self-confidence and assertiveness and acceptance and tolerance for our students. Thank you.
Good evening, Doug Parker, principal of Green Central School. And as we all know, a major focus for our students is social emotional learning, particularly during this pandemic. That's essential to our students' overall well-being. And one wonderful way to incorporate this learning into the regular classroom is by using morning meeting. Morning meeting is specifically structured. It consists of 4 components: greeting, sharing, group activity, and the morning message. And each portion of the morning meeting addresses important components of social emotional learning, which can certainly include recognizing and addressing bias, including gender bias, ability bias, etc. All elementary classrooms in our district are using morning meeting each day, usually lasting 20 to 30 minutes, and hence the name. Ideally, morning meeting occurs in the morning. Sometimes it doesn't, depending upon schedules, but regardless, as long as we can get that in, that's a benefit to our students. So by front-loading those skills in morning meeting, it really helps contribute to the positive culture and climate of collaboration and trust in each of our classrooms. So as far as the greeting, the whole class essentially sits in a circle, which includes the teacher. They greet each other usually one at a time. One says something to the other, and it can be verbal. Obviously, we have to be creative with the spacing during the pandemic, but it can be a motion, it could be a dance, it could be as creative as the teacher could be. There are a variety of sources to find different greetings. And of course, the teacher's presence is crucial to make sure that things go smoothly. That builds that climate of trust, because if it's something goofy or hokey, which I think all of us had done with our own staffs over the first 5 days, It's very hard to be goofy or hokey on your own, but boy, when you're part of a team, you kind of build that trust that we're all in this together, let's all give it a shot, and if we all look silly, so be it. It creates that safe environment, so, and that's a wonderful thing to incorporate and to encourage. Then there's a sharing component, information about the students or a topic that the teacher chooses, might be academic, and there are several ways that they can go about sharing feedback. It could be the whole group, it could be turn, pair, and share, there we go. Or it could be dialogue, sharing a few kids at a time, share their feedback. Then there's a group activity, and that gives an opportunity for focus on team building skills, and there's going to be either success or maybe try again as a whole group. During the activity, they're going to problem solve, they're going to have some fun. And it is true because not every student comes to school with the skills to know how to work as a team or to play safely or to win or lose gracefully. So those are good skills to really enhance within the classroom. Then finally, there's a morning message, and that can be academic activities for the day. It can be classroom issues, including things like teamwork, friendship, stereotyping, inclusion. It's whatever needs to be addressed at that time. And that time is used to focus on personal character development as well. Topics that teachers don't always have time for every day later on in the day, so that's a perfect check-in opportunity. Students come away with that message that I'm part of this class. It really matters that I'm here every day. So the overall purposes of the morning meeting to maintain that respectful tone and those engaged learners. It builds and enhances connections with the adults and students, merges academic, social, and emotional learning, and addresses the need to feel important and connected to others. So we really enjoy having morning meeting rolling on throughout our buildings. I'll turn things over to Danielle at this point, right?
Hi, Danielle Maris, principal at Lee Central School. And one of the things we wanted to mention too was that this summer, based on some of the things that were going on in our society, some of the teachers decided that they wanted to kind of do a study group around racism, and that kind of grew into a group that approached Teresa and asked about doing it as a district thing, and a small group of about 13 of us joined. There were administrators, elementary, middle, and high school teachers, and just a really concerned group of educators who wanted to have some professional development and tough conversations with each other about how do we address our own biases and how do we teach our kids to address biases in our society. So we started by reading White Fragility, and we also watched some podcasts. Ibram Kendi, who wrote How to Be Anti-Racist. We watched him and some of his work. We looked at the 1619 Project from the New York Times that looked at the history of racism in America from a much different perspective than we've generally learned it. We looked at some stuff that Maine DOE has put out, something USM's put out, all kinds of different things that group began to share a lot. We had some Zoom. We had some Zoom meetings with some breakout sessions, and it was very, very informative, and it was a great way to grow and to learn about the implicit biases, the subconscious things that we don't even realize. We were brought up in the society that we were, and our children are brought up in this society, and so recognizing what's going on was really a great experience. And I believe that group wants to continue. Our focus, everybody's focus in this district has been on getting kids back into school since August, but I'm sure that group hasn't gone away and will be interested in continuing once things settle down again. And when Kim Brandt asked us to do this, I also touched base with a couple of my teachers just to see if I could find specific examples of what they might do in their classrooms. And I have one teacher that's particularly passionate about this, was a member of that group this summer of professional development. And she gave me a very long response to my question, but she focuses a lot on the literature that she presents to students and how that can be used to discuss really tough topics and to talk about biases and racism and all the different other difficult conversations like that. She talked about certain books that she uses and how by having the characters be children that are similar in age to the children in her class, it helps to have these sophisticated ideas at a developmentally appropriate level. And so another thing she shared too is that she subscribes to Scholastic News, which is written at the appropriate level for each grade level that you subscribe to. And it asks her students get to read about things that are going on in the world at a level that's appropriate for them. And she said one of the recent cover stories focused on bias and how a fourth grader started an awareness campaign by marketing crayon packs that are composed of different skin colors. So those kind of articles to read and discuss in the classroom are another way that she addresses bias and opens those discussions with the students. So we have a lot going on in our school, in our district, and a lot of really caring, compassionate educators who are trying to learn about their own biases and how to address those and to make sure that we raise socially conscious students.
Hello. And I couldn't have said it better. I mean, these guys are all excellent. And at the middle school, we are getting the lessons of bias in our English language arts lessons and our social studies lessons. And even in our school, Be Safe, Respectful, and Responsible, during our advisory times on Wednesdays when all the kids are together, they do activities around being respectful and what that looks like. And even just in the moment mini lessons, when something occurs in any classroom, they break out and they discuss it. So it's always on the top of everybody's mind to make sure that we're all learning and growing, and it just kind of gets embedded in our day.
For some reason, I keep sitting over there and having to walk over here. Maybe I'll figure it out at some point. So I'm a jar principal at Levitt, and I get the pleasure of bagging cleanup today. And rather than repeating a lot of stuff that's already been said, I think I know having an inclusive culture in our schools is something that we all strive for and work towards on a regular basis. But it's something that requires constant attention from everybody. So we have here at the high school, we have a number of ways that we do that. I'm just going to talk a little bit today about some of the work that our student organizations do. We have some student groups that work specifically on this type of, on this topic. The one I'm going to really focus on today is our Unified Schools Club. They do a lot of work around this school. And we also have a Civil Rights Club and a couple other key clubs. They also have addressed some of these issues as well. Taking on what are quite difficult conversations and topics and addressing it with their peers. In addition to that, much like in the other buildings, and we have these types of this type of information embedded into lessons, particularly in social studies and history, but also in the novels that are in our English language arts classes. Again, it's a topic that is one that comes up fairly regularly, as it's something that it requires, as I said, requires a constant attention.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing those details. I know we had discussed this at our last meeting. I think it was a pretty safe. Like Richard had said, I'm sure that there's a lot of work that's going on around those things. We don't need a particular resolution from being School Board Association, and I think we've all kind of proven that right, that there's lots of work going on those fronts. On to Mr. Roberts.
Well, thank you for allowing me to present tonight. There's a lot to talk about. Not much time to do it, and I'm going to try to keep you here for 5 to 10 minutes only. I usually have visual aids, but the only visual aids I have for tonight is I brought a few menu items from the high school just to kind of get an idea of what it is we're serving and what it takes to package these items for our students, both within the building and outside of the building. And I was going to put a plug into this. All of our menus are posted online. So here's one of the variety we're serving. You can see those online. And that's why you need to do that over here.
obstacles. I get a free one afterwards, right?
First thing I noticed, I brought this card down, and it said no food or drinking in auditoriums, so I broke that rule, I apologize. This is not for consumption, it's for show and tell only. Just a brief discussion on what we have. We do a lot with these 4-packs. The meal components is a 5-component meal, so with a milk, this allows us to pack 4 components, fruit, veggie, grain, and protein, so we do endless varieties of these things. The 4-pack, we call it a munchable pack, K through 6, and 7 through 12, we call it a power pack. So tonight we have a cranberry chicken salad with whole grain crackers, celery sticks, and fruit. We're able to do wraps. This is a buffalo chicken wrap with fruit and veggie. We do a pizza power pack, which is the flatbread, the pizza sauce, cheese and pepperoni, fruit. We do a variety of fresh salads, chef salad with cheese and protein. This is a turkey and cheese chef salad with croutons. We do, at the high school, we try to have 2 or 3 hot items on the menu every day. These are actually packed to go home for remote meals to be reheated with instructions. When we serve them in the building, we serve them hot. Homemade shepherd's pie with a fresh whole grain roll, fruit, cheeseburger, bacon burger, crispy fries, pizza sticks with dip, fresh banana. So we're doing a nice variety of things. It is challenging, but with a variety of packaging, we can do all components and serve a pretty good variety. So I'm sure it's not breaking news to you here that we've had to make many changes since the pandemic came our way. That's not, we're not alone. Everybody changed everything during the pandemic, of course. But beginning in March 2020, we had to change the way we did menu planning, the way we did purchasing, the way we did meal production, meal delivery, staffing, reporting, record keeping, everything. Our staff had to go through mandatory USDA training for the new meal patterns and the new accountability requirements. At that time, we also lost several staff members because of the way the pandemic affected their families, and we adjusted accordingly to be staffed in the spring and summertime. So the USDA made some fundamental changes at the very beginning. You may have heard that they authorized a number of nationwide waivers that allowed the summer program to be served during the spring. Now, the summer program typically is reserved for those high poverty areas that run rec programs in the summertime and feed kids on location. The first waiver allowed this operation to be implemented everywhere for both breakfast and lunch. We applied for the program right away, and we established one meal distribution site in each town. We had one at Leeds Central School, and because of waiver restrictions, we had to locate the ones at Green and Leeds off campus. We used the Green Town office and Woofy Quimby initially. Other waivers came progressively. One allowed us to move back to the school once they waived the requirement that the location be 50% free, reduced, or higher. When they waived that, we could relocate to the schools and turn them green. Other waivers came through parents who were given authority to pick up meals instead of students. That way the students could stay home. They waived the on-site activity requirements, so we didn't have a bunch of kids gathering on site. They allowed us to distribute up to 2 or 3 days worth of meals at one pickup time to minimize contact and exposure to our community members. It's also important to note that by opting into a modified summer meal program, the site sponsor, us, is obligating themselves to provide meals to the community above and beyond school children. So that meant that meals had to be publicly offered for children ages 0 to 18 at all the locations. What we noted in our summertime meal distribution was that each town, the rates of meal distribution paralleled the free and reduced rates in each town. So that gave us confidence that those families accessing those meals were the ones that were actually in need. So that was good to see. Perhaps the biggest change affected by this makeover really was that all the meals can now be offered at no cost. I'm sure you read about that. So that meant that federal reimbursement dollars were available for every meal served, which was nice because in addition to providing for the nutritional services of our communities, one of our primary charges is to manage those dollars responsibly. Now, just as a little bit of background, typically our revenue comes from 3 sources. state and federal reimbursements, typically for free and reduced meals primarily. Parent payments, and then if and when those sources of revenue don't cover our expenses, we ask for a small local subsidy from the taxpayers. So how are we doing with that regard? Well, due to the hard work and dependability of our outstanding staff members, I'm happy to report that those meal counts for the spring and summer were very, very robust. So coupled with favorable reimbursement rates, this allowed positive cash flow throughout the spring and summer, right to the end of the fiscal year. Now, we typically ask for a small subsidy. When I say small, about 7% of our revenue comes through the general budget process. So we ask for $70,000. Now, historically, that $70,000 gets us to a zero balance. It pays down that annual deficit. We start the year at zero balance. Because of the positive cash flow that we had in the summertime, we didn't have a deficit. So that $70,000 actually put us in the black and had us starting the year with a surplus. Very, very nice. So, as you know, those waivers have now been extended for the rest of the school year until June 30th, or until our last day of school, whichever comes first. Thanks to the hard work of our department, we fine-tuned our operations. We set up meal distribution to all the classrooms in all 6 of our buildings, and you can see how we're accomplishing that now. It's working very well. In fact, we're feeding better than 70% of our kids in buildings now, which is really nice. We have established public meal pickup sites at each school, Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings, typically mid-morning, so that the buses are gone for the community members. And by the way, those public meal pickups are also the primary way that our kids who are doing remote learning are getting their meals for those days. Within the last few weeks, we initiated a mobile meals distribution route with our new van, providing for those families who can't, for whatever reason, make it to the school pickup sites. As we analyze the data from September through the first half of October, we're very optimistic. We've had some very efficient staffing models. Purchasing and inventory controls are becoming fine-tuned. It looks like we have a very viable financial model. We did run a little bit of a deficit in September. That's going to be more than offset by the surplus in October. And I feel like going forward, we're going to be in very good shape. The fact is, our biggest challenge is probably lie ahead, because we know that these programs won't be forever like this. We know they're going to change eventually. So we'll either revert to our previous model, which we can run, we've done it, or there might be something completely new, we never know. We keep hearing from our child nutrition leaders at MDOE that they don't have a crystal ball. Well, I don't think anybody has a crystal ball, so we'll have to see what the future holds with regard to our program specifics. Well, I hope that helps a little bit. Are there any questions I can answer at this time?
Questions for David? This one? Well, I just say thanks for bringing the visual aids as well. It's always cool to see exactly what the kids are enjoying when they're here at school. I will say that.
I believe you eat, but I feel like I need trouble with it.
I think,
Let's talk about something. I'll leave it in the corner for now.
Thanks again, and thanks for all the hard work that's been put in. I know we've probably seen some of the headlines that this is all so strange and impossible to make work, but once again, you and your staff have made it work and made it work well, so thank you very much. Moving right along, that brings us to the superintendent's report.
I was going to say, welcome Olivia Morel to the board, but we've kind of done that, but I am really happy to see you here, so thank you. On Tuesday evening, Leavitt Area High School Principal Shaw accepted the Principal of the Year award virtually. Now, what should have happened, if we were not in a pandemic, is that he would have had an all-expenses paid trip to Washington, D.C., where he would have studied some of the current legislation, and he would have advocated for several different pieces of legislation with our senators, Collins and King. He obviously didn't get to do that because of the pandemic. However, he got one virtual award receipt, and I want us to take just the 7 or 8 minutes it's going to take and watch that tonight in honor of his big award.
For an outstanding principal at a Maine secondary school. This award is presented in conjunction with the National Principal of the Year program sponsored by the National Association of Secondary School Principals. This award recognizes personal excellence as well as outstanding work in the areas of collaborative leadership, curriculum, instruction, assessment, and personalization. In sum, the recipient of this award focuses on providing high-quality learning opportunities for all students. This year, the honoree for the Secondary School Principal of the Year is Evan Shaw, principal of Levitt Area High School in Turner. Evan receives this award because he embodies the values to which his community aspires. Values such as generosity, humility, grit, positivity, adaptability, creative problem solving, and deep caring for his staff and students. He is well respected by those he works with, whether it is implementing mindfulness process for stress, opportunities to attend truck driving school, providing many club opportunities, or supporting his staff with coaching and professional development. Evan finds ways to provide what his students and staff need to succeed on their chosen path. Evan graduated from the University of Maine in 1997 with a Bachelor of Science degree. He then went on to obtain his Master of Science degree in 2007 from Walden University. Evan started his educational career as a science teacher at Auburn Middle School in 1998. In 2000, he returned to his alma mater and became a science teacher at Levitt Area High School. He then moved into the assistant principal role in 2007 and has been the proud principal of the same school in 2010, where he still serves in that capacity today. According to one of his classroom teachers, Evan understands the importance of including others in decision-making and information sharing, allowing us to grow our own leadership skills. He finds expertise in the building to lead workshop days where we have learned how to incorporate art into our curriculum, to utilize technology to benefit students' learning, and to use formative assessment data to differentiate instruction. He also recognizes the importance of student input. The experiences he has provided empower students by allowing them to take on a role where they are learning by creating something available to and appreciated by the public. Evan, on behalf of the Maine Principals Association, I am pleased to present you with the award as Maine's 2020 Principal of the Year. Congratulations.
Thanks, Paula. Thank you to Holly and Mike Burnham and Mike Bisson as well. I find myself in some pretty elite company here tonight. It's truly an honor to be recognized here. And although this award recognizes me as an individual, it takes a team to do the job for which I'm being recognized. So I also need to thank my team. I'm very fortunate to have an outstanding one at that. The team is extensive. It includes the students, the faculty, and the staff here at Levitt, my building leadership team, and the district administrative team. Ultimately, without the support of my family team, this wouldn't have been possible. From my extended family, who have to endure somewhat awkward conversations sometimes around the community, having be associated with the high school principal, to my parents, who supported me all along the way. But particularly, my wife Susan and sons Orrin and Blaine, who, and I'm going to put in air quotes, have the pleasure of enduring everything from school events to my occasional rant as I pace around the house. But over that past 9 years, they've taken it all in stride, which I greatly appreciate. As Paula pointed out, I did attend Levitt Area High School, so I'm very proud to be here today, tonight, to represent Levitt Area High School, as well as the Maine Principals Association, and the entire Levitt community. When I was here as a student in the early 90s, I kind of thought it was a pretty good place to be. Now having worked here for almost 20 years, there is no doubt that this is a great place to be. We have a strong school community, and that has served us well over the last 7 months. Obviously, this time has been difficult for everyone, but if this experience has done nothing else, it has taught us that maintaining a positive outlook in the face of constant adversity is an important, albeit difficult task. Having had the opportunity to work with a team of people dedicated to making the best out of an awful situation, this has certainly helped to make this go as smoothly as it possibly could. But to be quite honest with you, I really didn't expect that I would ever be here accepting an award from the Maine Principals Association, particularly as a school administrator. Even when Holly called me in March to share the news, it took quite a bit of time for it to sink in. When I started teaching in 1998, I had no intention of becoming a principal or an administrator, for that matter. And when I became the assistant principal here at Levitt, I thought that was great, but I had absolutely no intention of ever becoming the principal. Obviously, things change, and when I did start as the principal, my only concern was not messing this thing up. So, at the time, I didn't even have really, other than to try to not mess things up, have the ability to move beyond what it might take to be really good at it. So, I know that it's a significant leap from trying to avoid messes to being nominated for and receiving this award, and I thank everybody who has supported me along the way. The entire journey has been an interesting one, and I've been fortunate to work with some very talented and dedicated people, and I still work with an outstanding group of talented and dedicated people. I've learned a lot from them, and I continue to do so. In fact, I have a list of leadership expectations. It's taped to my wall right here to my right. It sits right by my computer. It was started by my predecessor, but I've continued to add to it. It has about 17 items on it now, 17 bulleted items that include things like everything we do must be done with integrity. It's all about the teaching and learning. And when it comes to students, we should be working harder than they are. It's our job. But rather than expectations, I guess they probably should be called rules to do business by, and rules that have been developed over years of experience of people before me, and in conjunction with work that we've done together. And these rules become even more important in times of difficulty, particularly like we find ourselves in now. It's a list that I've referenced regularly over the last few months, and will likely continue to reference in the months to come. I am truly appreciative of this recognition. This has been both an exciting and humbling experience. I look forward to continuing my work with my team and overcoming any challenges that we face. So again, thank you to the Maine Principals Association. Thank you to everyone in my extensive team for this great honor. I truly do appreciate it. Thank you.
And Randy and Jeff, thank you for setting that up for tonight. Okay, other things in the superintendent's reports include that I was able to meet with our town managers last Friday. That's Kurt Schultz in Turner, Joyce Pratt in Leeds, and Darlene Beaulieu, who was unable to attend after all, so hopefully next meeting she'll be able to join us. Those meetings are good in terms of communication and sharing information about what's happening in our towns as well as what's happening in the district. So we will continue those going forward. Hopefully you saw the letter that I sent out on October 14th. I plan to give an update bi-weekly to all of our families and staff about the things that are happening in the district. I want to make sure that we recognize those things that are worth celebration and appreciation, because with all the change and constant change, there's still a lot of really good things happening. I want to make sure we don't lose sight of those. I'll also be reporting on progress in the challenges that we're facing, as well as any other important information that people need to know. Actually, Jason had set up for me on the front page of the website the superintendent's messages, and that's where I keep all those communications, so that if anybody wants to access that, they can see everything for the past several months, which hopefully is helpful. Our district enrollment is down by 88 students. As you know, the essential programs and services funding formula, which is used to determine state subsidy, is enrollment driven. So being down 88 students matters. It will impact our subsidy. When I spoke with you 2 weeks ago, I told you we thought the number at that time was 70, but we were still working on it. It is 88, and it will be for our October 1st. So we will be, I anticipate we will receive less subsidy for FY '22 than we did for this current year, and that could be substantial. As soon as we know what that is going to look like, which won't be until January or early February, we'll have further discussions. Another one of the MSBA proposed resolutions that the board discussed 2 weeks ago had to do with boards meeting virtually. And Richard, I believe you asked if we have been meeting as allowed for this past spring and summer. I told you at that time, yes, there was a governor's executive order that allowed us to do that. I went back to find that order to find the expiration date on it, and it was actually emergency legislation that was passed. And that will last until 30 days after it is decided that there is no longer a public health emergency going on. I also asked the board 2 weeks ago if they would please be thinking about which of you would like to serve on the Dropout Prevention Committee per our policy JFC. And that requires a member of the board chosen by the board. So I would ask that the board think about that right now and perhaps choose who would like to do that.
Do we have board members or a board member who would be interested in serving in that capacity? Joanne?
I'll do it. If you're looking for somebody to volunteer. I don't know just what you're looking for.
Volunteers are great. Kim, do you believe that we need a nomination and a vote kind of thing, or that general consent?
I think general consensus is fine.
Well, thanks, Joanne, for your willingness to serve on there.
Well, I don't know, you've got a consensus here or not.
I'm seeing head nodding, and so I feel like I'm starting to interpret a lot from people's eye movements, but seeing as how I've learned that the prescription on my glasses isn't exactly accurate, maybe that's not a safe thing to do. So is maybe with exaggerated head nods, are folks good with?
Got it.
Excellent. Thanks, Joanne.
Okay, thank you, Joanne. Also, a couple of weeks ago, there was a question about our playgrounds and the track, and were we open or were we closed? So we had actually closed our playgrounds and our track to the public since last, I think it was April, and that was on the advice of our insurance carrier due to liability. They have remained closed since that time. We do have signs posted. We do understand that perhaps not everyone is abiding by those signs, but at this point they do remain closed. I also wanted to, Richard, I think you had asked us about what is in some of the coronavirus relief funding budgets that we submitted. So just to go back, we have 2 parts. We have CRF 1, that has been approved. We have CRF 2, and that budget has been submitted, and we're waiting for imminent approval, I would say at this point. So I'd like Michelle to share some of the projects that are in CRF 1, because we know that one's approved.
Sure. You want me to?
Yes, please, thank you.
So this has been a really interesting process. We heard in the middle of July that there was money coming, and we found out July 17th that there was money, and then July 24th we found out that there was an application, and then in the middle of August they did a meeting to tell us how to put it all together, and then it was due August 31st. So the first CRF 1, the allotment was $1,606,686.55. Kim put together a very comprehensive and inclusive meeting of the minds, and all of the administrators were advised to take a look at what their needs were, given the criteria that it had to be COVID related. Kim had to attest that we're meeting all of the CDC criteria in order to get this money. And so in a matter of a week and a half, we pulled together a list of items and put together a budget to submit to the state. That was approved actually the next day. And then we had until the end of September to finalize that. So if there was any tweaking that had to be done, we had until the end of September. So as part of that CRF 1, some of the items that we put in there, and I'm not sure I'm going to get all of them, but the biggies were, and they had it broken down by criteria. So the first one was transportation. We purchased 4 mini vans for special ed. Due to distancing guidelines, we were not able to fit as many kids on the vans as we normally would. We purchased 2 of the white minibuses. These do not require a special license to drive, and also allowed us to put more children on them for special ed transportation. We have 6 additional bus drivers. We purchased additional PPE and cleaning materials for the buses, additional signage for the buses. We had to purchase storage for the PPE and all the sanitizer that we received, and additional gas for the additional vans were budgeted. For facilities, we budgeted for the rental units for the temporary ventilation that had to do with the Siemens Phase 2 project. The ventilation in the building would have been fine under normal circumstances, but in a pandemic, we felt as though it would be smart to be super safe, and it was recommended that we get a temporary ventilation while that project was going on. So that was the facilities piece of that. For materials, we had a meeting of the minds of additional student supplies to support social distancing and the inability to share items. You know, students all of a sudden, you know, there's not a bucket of crayons, you each have to have your own crayons, pens, pencils, sanitizer. They were very creative with coming up with additional seating options, mats. We had to purchase some desks for distancing, desktop dividers, water bottles so that children had their own individual water bottles. Purchase of microphone amplifiers with speakers for teachers so that they, you know, would be able to be heard from a further distance. Distance learning software, additional classroom PPE, signage for schools, the playgrounds, the classrooms, the hallways. For equipment and nutrition, we ordered additional food carts, cabinets, pans, ice packs. We also purchased a new food service van with a larger capacity for food delivery. Under salaries, we have temporary custodians for all the schools for the additional cleaning up necessary. There were also money allotted for additional contracted temporaries, substitutes, and some money was allotted for overtime for some of the hourly employees. There also was 2 professional development days at the beginning of the school year for ed techs to train on the DOE and CDC requirements so that they would know how to work with students setting up physical space and how to move through the building safely. In the technology group, we ordered over 500 iPads, over 250 Chromebooks, headsets, chargers, cases, stands, Zoom licenses, online science and textbooks, cabling and wireless infrastructure, laptops and printer scanner combos in anticipation that there may come a time that some of the administrators need to work remotely, as well as new laptops for administrators. And I do have some information on what we're proposing for the second one, if you would like me to. So CRF 2 is, and this was needed to be submitted by last Thursday. We submitted it last Wednesday. They opened it up for us the day before yesterday. We resubmitted it yesterday. We're just waiting at this point to hear that it's approved. And in the meantime, we're putting together all of the accounting so that when it does get approved, that they're ready to order. So in CRF2, that's $1,685,184.14. And then under that, we're looking at desks and desk guards, more flexible seating. One of the schools asked for an outdoor tent for dismissal in inclement weather, everyday math bundles, additional books, cameras, mics, and monitors for live streaming, wireless PA systems, equipment for live streaming, more events and activities for students and parents. And of course, this time they changed the different groups, so that was student supports, and then under staff supports, we have additional laptops, along with other associated things such as USB adapters, keyboards. For PPE, we have more plexiglass dividers. For operations, maintenance, and plant, we are going to spend a good chunk of money repairing or replacing or adding sidewalks. We now have different walkways than we normally would, and the walkways that are being used to get into alternative entrances are either in they're in bad shape or they're not really a walkway at all. So Dan had proposed that for TPS, TES, LCS, and GCS. Upgraded parking space for leads due to additional room social distancing needed for drop-off and pickup. Some new signs that will allow for remote updating in order to provide information such as meal pickup, student packet pickup, and any other special information that might be related to the pandemic or whatever the information the school needs to get out. We're looking at converting all of the toilets, urinals, and sinks in the district to touchless, all water fountains to touchless water bottle fillers, additional handheld radios to assist with student drop-off and pickup, a scissor lift for additional cleaning in areas that are hard to reach, a bus-only route for TMS and TES that would allow separating bus and parent pickup and drop-off, an HVAC unit, a TMS for the gym to improve air ventilation. For transportation, steam cleaner for the vans, additional bus route signs, food service needs additional subs and some additional supplies. We also received the ESSER CARES grant. That one was $266,303.26. We originally were headed down one direction with that and then realized that that has a deadline in September of 2022, I believe, to be spent. So that one kind of took a back seat when we realized that these other two need to be spent by December 30th. There also was a CRF Adult Ed grant, which was $6,818. And so the deadlines that we had have been that we have to have November 10th, we have to have all of that money committed. And when I asked what that meant, I was told that for personnel, we have to provide or have ready a list of all personnel that we expect to use, the number of hours and their dollar amounts. For services, we have to have contracts with completion date or confirmation from the service providers of the completion date. For supplies and equipment, we have to have purchase orders with vendors or order confirmation of goods. And that's by November 10th, and the second CRF, we haven't even gotten approved, and we have to have all of that done by November 10th, so you can imagine the angst that we have in trying to figure out how we're gonna make all that work. December 30th is not only the deadline for spending that money, that's also the deadline for having all of that work completed and having all of the bills paid. And the final report back to the DOE is due on January 2nd. So very, very short time frames. It's been very interesting. The business managers have had a weekly meeting with the DOE. The DOE have been in the same position that we are in that they've been responsible for putting out a lot of money without a lot of guidance in a very short period of time. And so things have been changing at a very rapid pace. And we're not always given a lot of time to gather what we need to gather. It's been full steam ahead. You know, as you can imagine, this process has touched the whole district from you know, the secretaries having to create all of these requisitions, to accounts payable having to, you know, create these purchase orders, get them out to all the vendors, to trying to get the items. All the schools are looking for the same type of items, and some of these things are hard to get, and technology has been a struggle. Of course, you know, with additional employees, there's additional payroll implications. We even had to change our 12/31 payroll date to 12/30 to accommodate that last payroll, when we realized that we're going to have to start 2 weeks ahead of time if we don't do that. So we've had issues with, you know, maxing out our Amazon allotment and having to pay bills on a weekly basis instead of a monthly basis in order to keep those lines open so that we can continue to purchase everything that needs to be purchased. The invoices, when they go in, they have to go in with backup of every single invoice that was paid for. So it's been quite a process. The next invoice will be about 3 inches high with invoices. So, any questions?
Let's go to this. Thank you. And obviously a tremendous amount of work gone into the process already, and will continue to on that sprint to December 30th. Back to you, Kim.
Okay, so one last thing. So yes, and I do want to thank all of our principals and directors again, because there has been an incredible amount of thoughtfulness and work done to identify how we could best use this money to support students and staff during the pandemic, and also things that will continue to support students and student learning going forward. And Michelle, thank you as well, because while you've been working on the bond projects, you've also taken on these large grants as well. So I thank the team. Okay, last thing that I wanted to share was that you may have read about the Department of Education developing the MOOS platform, and MOOS stands for Main Online Opportunities for Sustained Education. And what the DOE has been doing is selecting different teachers around the state to work on creating this wonderful resource of project-based lessons and all different grade levels, different content areas, different subjects that any main educator can access to support learning both in school and virtually, really is the thing. We have 4 teachers in our district who have worked on the MOOS platform, and that's pretty impressive. Even if we had 1 teacher, that would be pretty impressive. We've got 4, and they are Neil Ryu at Levitt Area High School, Nadia Ryu and Catherine Robitaille, both 5th grade teachers at TES, and also Sarah Michu, who is pre-K at Green Central School. So congratulations to those 4 exemplary educators who are helping the entire state with virtual plans.
Well, that was a lot of information. Thank you for all the updates, and again, for all the continued work that is probably looking a little different than we imagined it might have a year ago, but continues on and supports students in our communities. Any last questions or anything for Kim or Michelle before we move on to the next item on our agenda? No? You notice I'm actually turning my head. I'm not really looking for full vision. Public comment. Do we have any public wishing to comment? Seeing none, move on to old business, which we also do not have any of. And that brings us to the consent agenda. Would entertain a motion for the list.
Motion move the list.
Yuri, do we have a second? Excellent. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Brings us to new business. And 9.1, instructional nominations. We'll turn that one over to Kim.
So the committee writes that they are very pleased to recommend Durudi Savantak. Teresa, I'm looking at you. Did I get that halfway correct? Halfway, okay. Thanks, sorry, Durudi. For the open position of part-time ESOL teacher, Durudi holds both a bachelor's degree in English language and literature, as well as a master's degree in teaching English as a foreign language, both from University in Thailand. Daruni has worked in MSAD 52 as an educational technician 3 since 2006, so she's been with us for a while, working at both TPS and GCS during this time. Prior to relocating to Maine, Daruni worked as an ESL, or English as a second language, an elementary teacher for 19 years. References comment that Daruni is a standout and works well with students, balancing a professional manner with a sense of humor. She is highly organized, extremely reflective about work, and she demonstrates a very strong ethic. So the interview committee is excited to recommend Daruni for this position, where she will work to support our English language learners.
And we got some late breaking news. She emailed me that she is eligible for certification. She heard from their DOA. So it says pending certification, which it still is, but we know that she's now.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. We have a motion for this one.
Yes.
Richard, second?
Second.
Crystal? Second? All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Brings us to item 9.2, approval of the 2021 school closing procedures.
So moved.
Second.
Yuri and Richard. Any discussion on this one?
Hopefully we won't have to use them.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. Item 9.3, approval of donation to Green Central School in memory of Braden Magover.
So moved.
Richard? Second. And the second was?
Megan.
Megan, thank you. Discussion on this one? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. 9.4, approval of pursuing clean water state revolving fund financing for the wastewater treatment plant. Yuri.
I would move that the resolution entitled Resolution to Authorize Issuance of $1,612,000 General Obligation Bonds to Finance a Wastewater Treatment Facility and Subsurface Disposal System for District Schools be adopted in form presented to this meeting, and that an attested copy of said resolution be filed within the minutes of this meeting.
Do we have a second to that?
Yes.
Richard, second. Discussion on this one. And just to recap, Michelle, this is what you had referred to last time, that because we were deemed ineligible for USDA's grant monies, this was the next best option from a cost of the money.
This actually allows me to gather any funding source, but the Clean Water SRF is the one that I filed an application with this week.
Excellent, thank you. And obviously that was pretty specific language around that needs to happen. Any other discussion on this? All those in favor? Unanimous. And I will make sure, board members, before you leave this evening, that you do sign this, since we've now just moved and adopted the idea that we would have a tested copy available. So we'll make sure everyone gets that signed. 9.5, approval of job description for human resource specialist.
So moved.
Richard?
Second.
Second. Crystal? Discussion on this one. Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. 9.6, first reading and acceptance of revised policy BEDD, Rules of Order and Regulations BEDDR, MSAD 52 procedural rules.
So moved.
Richard? Do we have a second?
Second.
Crystal? Discussion on this one? Yuri?
Was the deletion of item B because of a legal reason, or was it the committee's decision to remove
Yuri's question was around the deletion of item B. Was that the committee's decision, or was that a legal recommendation, or?
It was the committee's recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other discussion on that one? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. 9.7, first reading and acceptance of revised policy BIC, MSAD 52, board member freedom of access law training, and exhibition BICE, certification of freedom of access law training.
So moved.
Second.
Yuri and Richard. Discussion on this one? Richard?
According to our recollections on the committee, who was the new person on the committee? You had Jill. Jill received training on this?
No, I have not yet.
No, you have not. Oh,
Not yet.
somebody had.
Crystal.
Oh, Crystal has. The rest of us don't recall ever being trained on freedom of access. And some of us have been on the board for, how long, Joanne?
A long time. I think I may have gotten the training the first time, which would have been like 2009, but I don't think I've had it since. And I think this is the one that I kind of wondered if it would just make sense to do a real quick review with all of us at the beginning of the year, so that everybody gets it every year. I also don't really see that it's really pertinent. I can't think of any access that we could grant people. All of our notes are public anyway, so I don't think it's a highly important one, but if we legally have to review it, maybe if we just did it at the beginning of every year, it would be done.
Excellent.
I had to do it.
I think I might have done it the first time.
Other discussion on this one? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. 9.8, first reading and acceptance of revised policy IHBA, individualized education programs.
So moved.
Second.
Richard? Crystal? Discussion on this one? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. 9.9, deletion of revised policy DM, cash in school buildings.
So moved.
Richard, do we have a second?
Second.
Crystal. Any discussion on this one? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. So that brings us to item 9.10, and that would be other. And I love how we go for the redundancy option here. We have 9.10 as other, and then 10 as other business. It's like going once, going twice. Do we have any other items of business we need to take up? Richard?
I have a question of Kim. At one of our previous meetings, I believe it was in September, you reported that 16 teachers and 80 students were in quarantine. Can you tell us what the current status is on those numbers now? I mean, how many teachers are in quarantine and how many students?
Yes, at this point, we don't have any positive cases in the school. Now, that can change at any time, but right now, we don't have anyone quarantined.
At that time, we had 4
Correct.
cases. And so now we have no cases and no quarantines.
As of right now, correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly.
Any other items that we need to take up this evening? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn, but I would be remiss in doing so without once again congratulating Mr. Shaw. And that was nice to see that on video, although slightly surreal and kind of meta to watch a video of you accepting an award on via video. But that's this year, so congratulations again. Motion to adjourn? Richard? Do we have a second?
Yes.
Yuri? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening.